screen starts glowing, and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hey listeners, welcome to the 245th episode of The Goods, a film podcast. It is not just episode number 245, but in fact episode 5 of a theme month, Brian. This is our grand finale to Musical Decades Month, is what we've been calling it. And this has been a fun, enlightening, provocative look at 10 decades of musical cinema. That is the 10 decades of the talkie, the synchronized sound film, and that would be the 1930s through the 2020s. At the completion of this episode, we'll have watched and discussed 10 different films, one from each of those decades. And the way that it worked was each episode we picked 2 movies, and they had to be from different decades, and they had to be connected in some way. And then those 2 decades were now out of the running. And then the next week, there would be 2 more movies, 2 more decades, etc. So this is episode 5, the last 2 decades. And we didn't go exactly early to late, although we hit the earliest ones first, and then now we're here in the 80s and the 90s, which I guess now that I think about it is maybe closer to the middle point than the later point, right?
Right, not super recent.
We're just getting old, Brian. We're products of the 80s and 90s ourselves.
That's right. And so I backed Dan into this corner by picking the last 2 decades that weren't the 80s and 90s with the thought, we generally try not to metagame, but I thought if I backed Dan into this corner, then he could talk about the Disney Renaissance. And sure enough, that's where he landed.
Yeah, I think you even said at one point on our chat thread, 80s and 90s are what's going to be left. That's interesting because those are the decades of the Disney Renaissance. And I imagined a thinking emoji there, even though you didn't actually use that. But yeah, no, that's fine. I had a couple other ideas for the 80s and the 90s. And I want to talk about, Brian, I don't know if you prepared other possible pairings as the month went along, or you kind of locked in on the 2 that you did, because I brainstormed a whole bunch of different ones towards the start of the month.
Only a little flexibility. Like, I had my 2 that I wanted, and I was able to get both of them. So I didn't have to journey too far astray from my original plan, but I did have like some fallbacks, like some, break glass in case of emergency options. But for the most part, the glass remains intact. What were some of your contingencies?
Well, it wasn't strictly contingencies. It was I tried to collect like scroll through Letterboxd. You can select musical films, and then you can actually group by decade. So then you can kind of just see. Now, it's not like every single movie that shows up as in the musical genre as categorized by Letterboxd is actually what I would call a musical. But that did make it easy for me to kind of like brainstorm possible pairings, because you could see one thing and be like, oh, that's an interesting pairing with blank, etc. I had a couple other ideas that I wanted to do. One that I thought was just going to be easy pickings was the 2 West Side Stories, 1960s and 2020s. But we ended up not having those on the board. If that had come to me, I might have thought about it. But didn't you take the 60s with, was it Mary Poppins was the 60s?
That's right. So I thought of cases like that too, where like we could have done Wizard of Oz and The Wiz or something.
Yeah.
Where depending on if it was weird decades, depending on what the breakdown was, it's like we could do remakes of things.
Right. And at one point I had what I thought was a great idea of Grease and High School Musical. But of course, there's an obvious flaw in that, Brian, which is that we've already discussed High School Musical. So that wouldn't qualify. And I had a couple others like that. I was like, oh, we kind of already talked about that.
Yeah, so it's like Wizard of Oz and Wiz, or Wiz and Wicked. And so that was like, if I had a B-side that I was thinking about, it was like, no matter what decades I get stuck with, I can weasel something Wizard of Oz in there, probably.
Right, that's true. And I thought about doing with the Wiz, because was the Wiz in the 70s or was it the 80s?
I think it was the 70s, but...
Yeah, so I was thinking of doing, actually, because when I did my Black History Month one, I was thinking of doing The Wiz and Purple Rain. So it would have been Michael Jackson and Prince. And I don't know how much Purple Rain is actually a musical, but, I mean, it stars Prince, or at least he does the soundtrack. I actually don't know almost anything about that movie, but I thought that would have been interesting.
1978.
Okay, so yeah, 70s and 80s was going to be a possibility. And then you took the 2000s. I was thinking of doing Once, which is like a very different musical. It's like entirely diegetic and like lo-fi musical. We didn't really do any of those that I can recall, where it's like it's like somebody just performing in the world of the movie, you know? I thought that might have been interesting too. There's a couple things you could have paired that with, like the 70s, The Harder They Come, which was a reggae one. I don't know. I had a whole bunch of, and you could like mix and match, you know. I thought about maybe doing like a Newsies with something and getting Colton in here, but I decided Newsies could deserve its own episode too. So, anyways, there's so many musicals out there, Brian, and many that we can discuss. Listeners, if you had any pairings that crossed your mind as you listened, please shout out to thegoodsfilmpodcast.com on our Discord, where we can discuss other possible musicals that could have been focuses of this episode. If you had any particularly provocative pairings, I'd like to hear them. So, but indeed, the focus this week is the Disney Renaissance, Brian. And I picked what is generally regarded as the beginning and the end of the Disney Renaissance. You'll sometimes hear slightly different definitions for both the beginning and the end. I think more often you'll hear different definitions for the end than for the beginning, but I have a lot of thoughts about the Disney Renaissance, and I am not the only person that has a lot of thoughts about the Disney Renaissance. This is one of the seminal pieces of American culture for people of our generation, I would say, Brian. Like, everybody knows, and pretty much everybody loves the Disney movies. Like, when you think of a Disney movie, if you are currently between, like, I don't know, 30 and 45, you probably think of the Disney Renaissance movies.
Yes.
And I know that they're both movies that you and I personally deeply cherish, and were very formative on the way that we looked at movies.
And I was wondering, Dan, if you were to just quick off the top of your head do top 3 Disney movies you watched the most when you were a kid, what would you say?
Oh man, watched the most. Definitely Aladdin, Hercules. I'd have to think about number 3, but probably those are the top 2. Especially if we're going Walt Disney Animation Studio canon.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to just be the Renaissance. It could be broader than that. It could be older than that.
Well, I don't think there would be another one that would qualify, honestly. It would probably be those, and I mean, maybe Beauty and the Beast. If you count a Goofy movie, I would probably throw that in there. But I don't know. Oh, probably Lion King, honestly, is probably number 3.
Yeah, Lion King was up there for me, but I think the top 3, and in no particular order, would be Robin Hood from 1973, The Rescuers from 1977, and one we're talking about today, which is The Little Mermaid. I actually watched The Little Mermaid like all the time when I was a little kid. Beauty and the Beast also a lot. But then there was like a stretch of time when I didn't watch The Little Mermaid for a while. And then in 2019, there was like a quote-unquote live broadcast, which was like a stage thing where there was a auditorium somewhere and they showed the movie on screen and then had like celebrities come out whenever there was a song and they would sing the song. This was a television event.
Sure.
In like summer 2019, pre-COVID. And we watched this as a family, And my brother said that he, as far as he knew, had never seen Little Mermaid before.
Oh my
And
gosh.
at this point, he was like 22 years old. And, you know, I was 29. And it's like, what? You never saw Little Mermaid?
How's
And
that possible?
We've debated if that is actually possible or if he had just forgotten, but it was not a big thing growing up for him. And it kind of like came flooding back for me. He's like, wait a minute, this is really burned into my memory, like somewhere in the deep past. And good movie. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll give it its official score. But yeah, I can see how it charted a new path for the studio.
Yeah. I mean, The Little Mermaid rips. Like, you're not going to hear us being too cynical about it here in general. And that's funny. It actually, it's interesting that now that I'm thinking about it, the three that I mentioned are probably, I'd have to go line item by line item, but are the three Disney Renaissance movies that star male protagonists: Aladdin, Hercules, and Simba. Or, you know, The Lion King. And Simba is the Lion King, I guess. Is that who it is, or is it like one of those things? It's like,
I assume so. So it's like the king is dead, long live the king. So you got several Lion Kings in the Lion King, but I assume it refers to Simba.
yeah.
I mean, in my review, I said it's Hamlet, Bambi. It's Hamby.
It definitely is. And one thing that I've appreciated a little bit as I got older is that I'm not sure on Lion King 2, but the Lion King 1.5. Did you ever see that one?
Right. So yeah, for Lion King 2, they did Romeo and Juliet, and then for Lion King 1.5, they did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Exactly. So they're leaning in on the Shakespeare in Africa with animals theme. So let's talk about what the Disney Renaissance is. There's a lot of media history baggage. Maybe not baggage, but just context, I guess. Addicted to context. Is that the phrase, Brian?
Right. And now I'm thinking about our No Mobile episode, and Teddy said, everyone comes in with a certain amount of baggage, expectations of what they think a No Mobile is going to be. So what baggage are you talking about here, Dan? And is it that consequential?
Well, I mainly mean what the Disney Renaissance is, and in particular, The Little Mermaid, 1989, what it is. By the way, I don't think I said what the two movies are, but the first and last Disney Renaissance movies, at least by my reckoning and by most reckonings, including Wikipedia's, it's not an official period or label, it's an unofficial designation, and that is The Little Mermaid, 1989, and Tarzan, 1999. So 10 years, and if I should count again, but I believe 10 films as well. So I'm going to pull this up and double check.
More or less. Sometimes people will throw in Roger Rabbit as the starting point, but that wasn't a musical, so
Right.
it's out of contention for us. And there was a year where, 1992 we got Aladdin, and 1994 was Lion King, so nothing came out new in 1993.
So it looks like, here's Wikipedia's official Disney Renaissance canon. The Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under from 1990, which I would say is maybe the black sheep of the Disney Renaissance. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan. I do want to talk about Roger Rabbit, but in general, what the Disney Renaissance was after Walt Disney died, and we talked about Walt Disney a lot in our Mary Poppins episode, and that's where I'll say it's kind of funny that 4 of the 10 musicals that we're discussing are Disney products. In fact, across 4 consecutive decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. There is a wider spectrum of musicals out there in cinema beyond Disney, but I would say, is Disney getting 40% of our musical attention inappropriate? Maybe not for like you and me personally, Brian.
Exactly. Yeah, what I think is that for 60s and 70s, obviously there would be many, many more options that we could have picked. It's like musicals were enormous in the industry in the 60s especially. Like, My Fair Lady and Oliver and Sound of Music and the other one you said, which was, oh man, I'm seeing it, The Fire Escapes, West Side Story.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, So many that we could have picked from then. But like 80s and 90s, it's like, think about musical movies, 80s and 90s that aren't Disney movies. I actually can't think of that many. They went out of vogue again. It's like there was Xanadu with Olivia Newton-John. It's like there's not that much that's not Disney.
There's definitely some out there, but you're right that musicals were a lot less central to the economy of Hollywood, what people were buying tickets to see. One thing that was important was Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest filmmakers ever, one of the most influential filmmakers ever. I was just talking with this guy on the Discord. His name's Eli. And he did this interview of me like for his website where he like talks to movie lovers and kind of writes what their opinions are. And he interviewed me as kind of like, here's a guy who writes about movies. And it was honestly indulgent of him to let me just talk about my thoughts on how does one review movies and grade them and such. And one thing he pointed out is I have this thing on my website called the Director's Index, where I basically put directors that I've written reviews of 3 or more films into one of 3 tiers. And I've only put 4 directors in the tier 1, which is the top one. And Spielberg is, of course, one of the directors that's there. I mean, just one of the GOATs. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is like, I was reading about the Disney Renaissance and I was like, even Spielberg kind of, not directly or not single-handedly, but kicked off the Disney Renaissance because he helped produce and spearhead the Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was the grease in the wheels of getting that film made. And you talked about that. Now it's a Robert Zemeckis made film, and it does a lot of very Zemeckis-y things. But if you think about that as being like, if you think of Spielberg as the one who kind of did a major thrust of getting that movie made, and then you kind of think of that and how it led to the Disney movies, it's like, think of the landscapes of movies that were formative on us, Brian. We have Back to the Future, which he produced, and then of course Indiana Jones,
Jurassic Park,
and now also the Disney movies. It's like he created the childhood, the movie landscape that we grew up in.
Right. So a couple thoughts about that, and maybe we'll get to come back to it on a not too far in the future episode. But so I rewatched a documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is about the Disney Renaissance. And it talked about Spielberg's contributions, and it's like multifaceted because, so for Roger Rabbit, what it is it's a live action animation fusion. It's people interacting with cartoons like Mary Poppins, and to do that, it's like they had to kind of reinvigorate the animation studio. And also it's like getting people, the audience, hype about, aren't cartoons great? It's like, remember cartoons? Remember how like important and formative they are, and like to actually physically make it, it's like you had to get the Fleischer guys working again and the Warner guys working again and the Disney folks working again, and get kind of the pump primed. And then also it's the competition aspect, because then Spielberg goes and he like teams up with Don Bluth, who was this splinter animator who had left Disney, was like working with Disney in the early 80s on like Fox and the Hound and stuff, and then thought he would go do his own thing, and like took a lot of his friend animators with him, like took them away from Disney. And then they made like Land Before Time and American Tail, and so now it's not just Disney as a one horse town. It's like, it's not the only skin in the game. It's not the only person, the only entity making animated features. So now they got to compete. And also Spielberg then did like his own thing with Amblimation. It's like, make Balto, make We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. And, you know, neither of those efforts really went very far. But then Spielberg tried his hand again at animation later in the 90s with DreamWorks.
Right. So you can't separate Spielberg from all of this. And I didn't mean for this to just be a Spielberg love fest, although I'm always down for one of those. But I guess a couple of important aspects of what you just said. So I think one thing is, yes, actually the Wikipedia Disney Renaissance article is very readable. It just kind of reads as a narrative of it and is a very good summary. And it also points you to a lot of different articles and chapters and books to read. So I found that to be actually very helpful in helping me get my context. Also, both Hunter Allen, who appeared earlier in this month, and Tim Brayton from the Alternate Ending website have really outstanding reviews on the history of animation, specifically the Walt Disney Animation Studios. They have very insightful articles, both on like how to perceive and evaluate the outcome, like the actual film, but also just the production history and the context and just the technique involved. It really makes you appreciate how much hard work is involved in making these things, you know? So I just want to shout out them. And this is all kind of preamble to saying what the actual thing is, which is that Walt Disney died in, was it the mid or late 60s?
Yeah, 1966.
And Wolfgang Reitherman, he was one of Disney's best friends and animators from the early days. And he was kind of put in charge of animation when Disney died. That's, I'm sure, a simplification of what the actual breakdown of responsibility was, but that's the gist of it is he was the one kind of being the creative leader for Walt Disney Animation Studios, and his vision was of very universal, not very dark stories. So like not very villain centric stories. And Bluth really didn't like that. This is one of the reasons that he left. So according to this, when he left, he took 11 of Disney's animators, but they only had 65 full-time animators at the time. So that was like 20% of the staff that Bluth took with him. And his first movie, or at least his first major one, was The Secret of Nim. And this being Don Bluth. And it wasn't like a super monster smash, but it was pretty well received, and it was considered much darker than what Disney was daring to do at the time. And this was like one of the pebbles that ultimately led to the avalanche of the Disney Renaissance, because then they started thinking more about, well, what can we do to kind of reinvigorate our animation and make it, freshen it up with the times and what people actually want to watch. And yes, so then all the stuff that you said about Roger Rabbit is, and that was in 88, I believe that came out. So a year before Little Mermaid. And so this stuff was really starting to roll. And then we just had a confluence of incredible talents at an incredible time for The Little Mermaid.
And one of the moments of self-reckoning, like when Disney was shaken to its core, that gets talked about in the documentary, is that in 1985, the highest grossing animated film was not Disney's The Black Cauldron, but the Care Bears movie.
Oh, God. We talked about that one.
So there's a goods throwback.
Yeah. Man, I haven't thought about that movie in a while. Dumbass Care Bear movie.
I think his name was Carehart.
So in 1988, in addition to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, by the way, one other thing the Wikipedia article points out is that it wasn't just all the competition that you're talking about on the American side, but in Japan in particular, animation was kind of becoming the beloved art form. It was like in the process of becoming a major industry and a major influence across animation in the whole world. And a lot of American animators really liked Miyazaki and Japanese feature animation. And that also kind of like raised the artistic bar and the artistic animation, or excuse me, the artistic ambition of the animators and storytellers at Disney too. So that was like another important thing. And have we actually talked about any studio? Is it Ghibli or Ghibli? I've heard it both ways.
I have as well, and I don't think so. I think the only anime we've done so far, well, with Will, we had that, was it different voice, silent voice?
Yeah, we did a platter of them with Will. We did 2 features and 2 shorts.
Right, we did the racing film, Redline, and then without Will, we did the Anne of Green Gables adaptation.
Right.
Akage no An.
I think that would be fun to discuss another Ghibli film at some point.
Gonna get Ghibli with it.
Sounds like, I don't know, like a fake curse word or something like that, or like something a magician would say. But, okay. So, 1988, Roger Rabbit. We haven't had a Goods episode on Roger Rabbit, have we? It's like we're at the point 245 that I'm starting to lose track of it.
Yeah, no, we have not. But I have been grappling this week because I got to pick the next movie, and I don't have the theme month guidelines to direct me. So it's like, what do I even talk about? It's like there are other movies that I like, but I know that I like them. So if we talk about those, I know I'll just give it a high rating. And so we have covered a lot of ground. We've got like 400 plus things that we've given scores to.
Yeah, but that's a movie that I love and is a real achievement. I mean, I think it has flaws as a movie, but I just am so blown away by it, as all the hard work they put into it and just what it's able to achieve in terms of immersion and just like visual wizardry in that.
Yeah. The thing about Zemeckis, to me, I recently rewatched the Back to the Future trilogy, and what struck me especially in 2 and 3, as well as in Roger Rabbit, is that he uses the effects so frequently and so skillfully that you forget they're doing anything. It's like you forget that it's special. You forget that it's a trick. It's like you just accept that, okay, there's cartoon characters walking around.
Right.
And like handing props to the humans. Like
right.
Back and forth. You know, Marty McFly gets handed a baby by his great-grandfather, who's also played by Michael J. Fox. It's like, I didn't even register that was like a gimmick. It's just like, oh yeah, they're two different characters.
Right. It's incredible. And so that was a big hit, and definitely like a beloved by critics, well-praised film. And as you said, behind the scenes, a lot of stuff was rolling for like a reinvigoration of Disney animation. So the people that they got on this were, from the director's side, we had Musker and Clements. So John Musker and Ron Clements. We've talked a little bit about them in the past. I think we did when we did our favorite Disney movies countdown, and I'm sure we have at other times too. But these two guys often work together over many years, and they were just these ushers that just had this knack for figuring out the right way to tell a story, an animated story in particular. And you look at many of the greatest Walt Disney animation films, and a whole bunch of them were helmed by Musker and Clements. And the idea of a director in animation is very different than it is in a live action movie, because they're not actually doing much of the animation most of the time. I mean, I think there's different ways to arrange it, but in like a big piece of studio animation, the directors, they're not necessarily choosing the camera angles, but they're like providing guidance to the people who are doing.
Right. So, yes, my understanding, which is also fragmented, comes from the different documentaries and behind the scenes materials that I've watched and read. And it seems like they hold a lot of storyboard meetings. So it's like they plan out, okay, these are the scenes we're going to need, and this is how they're going to progress. And then like a football team, it's like they delegate to the different people, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And what strikes me as strange, and I can't really picture how this works, but they assign individual animators to draw the different characters. And, like, how does that go together in a way that's seamless? It seems like everything would look different if you did it that way, but apparently that's how they do it.
Well, but think about it the other way. If you had a different person drawing Ariel every other scene, don't you think that may look even stranger? But I think you're absolutely right in terms of, like, it's a mechanical, like, logistics challenge. Like, it's not strictly artistic. I mean, movies in general are that way. You know, it's like a cross section of business, technology, process, and artistry, of course, you know? And I think animation is fascinating because you really get all of those in a way. Like, I was just writing a review of the other Linklater movie from last year, Nouvelle Vague, which was about the making of Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard. And he was just like a guy who was like, I'm just going to make this movie. I just want to make it. I'm just going to go do it. And he was a jerk, but he like ultimately made his movie. And, you know, he struck to exactly his vision, exactly the way he wanted to do that. Like an auteur. But you can't really have animation auteurs in a studio. Now, it seems like in Japan, they do assign it more to like an individual person than they do in American studio animation. I don't quite know how, like, oh, this is a Miyazaki film. Like, to what extent he's actually drawing every cell. But it kind of sounds like he's doing a lot more himself than, like, certainly directors are, like Musker and Clements are here.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, and it may have even been a different model back then, but when we did Snow White, where, you know, we justified that for directorial debut, but to kind of talk about, like, the debut of Disney features.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, we had Musker and Clements, and they also wrote the script. So they really were had their hands on this one and were shaping this one.
I actually have a story about this, the Musker and Clements helming Little Mermaid. So I read a book about the 20 years of Michael Eisner's tenure at Disney from like 1984 to 2004-ish. So that's a pivot point that gets talked about in both that book and the documentary. Was like in 1984, Eisner got brought in as the new, not exactly the CEO, but like the chairman of the company. And then he brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg, and they were running it. Anyway, that there was what it called a gong show meeting. They had everybody come in and pitch their like top 3 ideas. And what I thought was really funny, so this was in like the mid 80s, like right after the new leadership came in. And the first idea that Musker and Clements pitched that they were really passionate about was Treasure Planet. They said, okay, guys, picture Treasure Island in space. Like, that's the one they had all the storyboards for. That was their number one. And then Katzenberg said, what else you got? They're like, well, you know, the studio back in, like, Disney's time in the 30s, they were thinking to maybe do a Hans Christian Andersen movie with, like, The Little Mermaid. Okay, let's do it.
So instead of Treasure Planet, which did eventually come out, I mean, Clements and Musker delivered enough that it's like, all right, just let them do their dang thing. And
right, and actually later in the book it says that, like, their stipulation to agree to direct Hercules was they had to greenlight Treasure Planet.
That's pretty funny. Fascinating movie, Treasure Planet. So Clements and Musker were in charge of the script and getting this one up and going, because they had done, I think both of them together, if not, then at least Clements was on The Great Mouse Detective, and people seemed to like them. And so, like, okay, what are you going to work on, like you said? And yes, so they pulled in 2 guys who you might not expect to be obvious candidates to work on a Disney movie at the time, but they brought in Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. So these were 2 off-Broadway playwriters, so not like super duper household names, but their sensibility turned out to be just right for Disney. And we did a lot of appreciation for Ashman and Menken when we talked about Little Shop of Horrors. I think we did both of them in one, the old one and the movie version of the play, the musical that they wrote.
Correct. Yes. So the original film, which doesn't have the This, or no, wait, it does have the. The original has the, and then they dropped it because it's cleaner. But the original 1960 film, The Little Shop of Horrors, was a Roger Corman movie. And I guess somewhere along the way, Howard Ashman found that and was inspired by it, and they made this off-Broadway musical. And now, again, this is from somebody who's not super deep, and I'm talking about myself, super deep in the industry. I would think that the lyricist... I just find writing lyrics easy. I don't know. I think writing music is much harder, and I would think of the composer being like the dynamo. But it seems from all the accounts that I've read that really Howard Ashman was like a dominant creative voice and like very much helping to steer the projects that he was involved in.
Well, one concept that I was thinking about a lot in these two movies, Brian, and I think both in what it depicts on screen, but I think also in the creative process, is the term synthesis. So synthesis being two things coming together to form a new whole. And at least in like the creative terms, when I think of synthesis, I think of two creative forms coming together that heighten the other. So if you've ever listened to Alan Menken talk about his partnership with Howard Ashman, they did do a documentary on him in the past couple of years, which I have not watched. I know it's going to make me sad. I really want to watch it. But if you ever hear Menken talk about Ashman, he talks about how they just worked together. So it's like, okay, one wrote the music and one wrote the lyrics, but it's not like one wrote it and then handed it to the other, and then that person took it and did it. It was a great collaboration, and they each helped make the other better than it was. Like apparently, I think Menken said it was his idea to make a song about a dentist and like have what happens in the musical version. Like he kind of architected that scene, and Ashman like built on that with like writing all the funny stuff that Steve Martin says. And then Menken's like, oh, and then you could kind of score it this way. So it was like this collaboration back and forth. I mean, I agree with you. I find like the prospect of writing like actual music to just be like impenetrable. Like how does one even do that? Whereas like I could at least envision writing lyrics. I've probably done it less than you, but I have written lyrics to songs before. But like I could never, I don't even know how it gets started. Like writing an orchestral score for a movie, you know, or like an entire book for a musical with like all the songs and stuff. And
right,
man,
yeah, I would be intimidated. I find that daunting.
Shout out to Zev, who joined our podcast one time, Zev Burrows, who's he actually makes quite a bit of headway writing music for plays and for short films, and awesome guy. And we had him on the podcast when we talked about Disney songs back in the day. So, but he sometimes on some Discords that I'm in talks about the process of writing music or what he's learned about it and stuff. And just tremendous appreciation for all the hard work that goes into that craft. But yes, so Ashman Menken came on to write the music for The Little Mermaid, and they, along with Clemens and Musker, bought into like essentially let's make it into an animated Broadway musical, which it's like that. It just feels so obvious now. It's like, of course, that's what a Disney movie is. It's an animated Broadway musical, but that was not obvious at the time. And in fact, they struggled a lot with it. I mean, they had tried it a little bit with the I think it was 88 Oliver and Company, which is a sort of retelling of Oliver Twist. Have you seen that? You've seen all of them, Brian, so you've seen that one.
Right. And actually that one is kind of interesting in conversation with Tarzan, because they brought in Billy Joel as this outside, pop singer to create songs for the film, which is kind of what they did with Phil Collins with Tarzan. Right.
Well, and the more obvious analog is Elton John and The Lion King for Tarzan, because I don't think Billy Joel actually wrote Why Should I Worry or the music. I could be wrong on that. But he obviously performed at least one song, and he did the voice work as well. I'm going to look that up now. Did Billy Joel write Why Should I Worry? No, he did not. It was written by Dan Hartman and Charlie Midnight.
Okay.
Hartman and Midnight. That's a great. I want to like read a detective novel about these two buddy cops, Hartman and Midnight. And at the same time, the animation was getting a lot better. So another signature thing of the Disney Renaissance is that it accompanied a growing maturity in using computers to help animate. So the big thing prior to the 90s, and again, I'm oversimplifying the history of the technology, but the big thing in general was the xerography technique, which I find to be very distinctive looking. It's kind of got more of a sketch look to it. It's a less clean.
Yeah, everything looks kind of dirty.
Yeah, it's less clean and fluid, but it allowed them to animate more quickly and do more detail per man hour, basically. And then for most of the Disney Renaissance, the technology that they used is called caps. And if you've ever seen, like, if you can think about in the Disney movies when, like, almost abruptly, it will, like, hop into 3D space, that is what caps was doing. And they got better at integrating it as time went. Caps actually was not around, if I'm not mistaken, for The Little Mermaid at all. I don't think The Little Mermaid had it. So I don't actually know exactly to what extent computers played a role in The Little Mermaid.
Right. So apparently no caps shots in Little Mermaid. Like, they bought the system in the lead up to Rescuers Down Under, and you got that shot where it's flying across the field of wildflowers in Australia, and everybody says, oh, that's the first caps shot. But in Little Mermaid, watching it this week, there's this one shot towards the end where Ariel, as the human form, runs down the stairs of the castle, and, like, suddenly the whole perspective shifts, and it's, like, very clearly digital staircase.
Oh, interesting.
And so I wonder, they must have had some kind of computer system for that, but it was, like, jarring. It, like, didn't even fit with everything else. And, of course, then there's the ballroom in Beauty and the Beast.
Right, that's probably the most famous one. The soaring through the 3D ballroom while they dance. Interestingly, though, neither film that we're talking about has caps, because Tarzan premiered a new system that was like the next evolution called Deep Canvas. And from what I've read, at least Tim Brayton on Alternate Ending found this to be like a huge achievement in the artistic capability of hand-drawn animation. Like, I've seen little demos of it. I don't even entirely understand how it works, but it's basically still hand-drawn animation, but somehow they use computers to allow you to, like, move through space while still preserving the hand-drawn animation. And it's just, like, mind-boggling stuff. And we'll talk about it in Tarzan, but just truly astonishing. Like, mind-blowing the way that it looks. All the use of space and motion. And then, of course, like, 2 years later, Shrek came out, and hand-drawn animation started to implode and see diminishing returns, and all these projects fizzled, and then Shrek made a ridiculous amount of money, and Disney started pivoting towards CGI. And honestly, American animation has not really had much of a hand-drawn animation focus at all since the Disney Renaissance ended. I mean, of course, there have been releases both by Disney and by other companies, but it was really like the last grand hurrah of the art form initiated by Walt Disney and his team back in the 30s with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and, you know, had the glorious history. And again, it's not gone, but it's more niche than it was. Now, like, the real moneymaker in animation is, of course, CGI, which just looks and feels different in some ways. I mean, it also has some similarities, but I don't know. So there's a certain romanticization of the Disney Renaissance as, like, kind of a glory years.
Right. And I mean, in some ways, I can see why the decision would be made to transition to CGI, because in CGI, you know, you have rigs for the characters. It's almost like you have puppets. And so it's like they remain consistent frame to frame. It's like it's not a fresh drawing every time. It's almost like stop motion. So it's a lot easier to stay consistent, and, you know, you can like procedurally generate some of the space, and it's just you got that third dimension to work with. I can see the allure for various sides of it. The economic side, even the artistic side. But it does feel like something is lost when you're not getting the hand-drawn stuff anymore.
So to me, like the way that I understand it, like the line, and sometimes like it's like, oh, is this CGI or is this hand-drawn? And it's whether the models of the character are rendered with computer code is essentially like at what point you call it CGI, or are the models themselves drawn by hand? Now you could have things where it's like the models are drawn by the computer, but the texturing and such is done by hand. In this case, by hand is in air quotes because it's not necessarily like ink on paper. It could be done like manually with tools, but it's not done by like programming where a light source is and like what the color is. Alternately, you could have hand-drawn models, but they get inked digitally or procedurally in some mechanism. And again, I know I'm oversimplifying. There's a whole artistry to it, but that's the gist of it. And you do start to see some collision of that in this deep canvas stuff in Tarzan, because it really does in some ways feel like it has this spatial wizardry, like zooming around and like you're actually in a space in the way that you can't do if you're having cells on 2D animation. And yet it still feels like it's connected. It's the same medium as The Little Mermaid in a way that Toy Story never feels like it's the same medium. I mean, it sort of does, but it's different, you know? All right, so where were we on The Little Mermaid? They decided to make it Broadway. And Ashman and Menken doing the music. And then you have Clements and Musker writing the script and leading the artistic vision. And man, what a film, Brian. Let's dive into it unless you have any other preliminary thoughts.
Yes, let's dive in. I think this has been our longest preamble to date. Maybe not. I mean, we had a lot of good talking points, but we're in The Little Mermaid now. We're in the waters. The song that it opens with, called Fathoms Below, I wish we got more of this song. It's just a little flavor setter. It's a sea shanty. And something I've noticed in a few Disney movies, it'll start out with a little short thing. It's like, wait, I want more of that.
Well, and I think it also like gives you the setting and the feeling, like the geographic, stylistic feeling. I have another one in mind, but what were you thinking about?
The key example, other than Fathoms Below, that I think of is Frozen Heart at the start of Frozen, which a couple things about that. I mean, that also is like a very manly chant song that, you know, then we're going to be following a female protagonist. So it's in Little Mermaid, it's sailors on a ship singing the it's, yeah. But in Frozen Heart, the very first shot is the ice axe stabs through the ice into the camera. So you also know that it's a 2013 3D movie.
That's right. Another thing I'll just say now is that in the context of Disney, the Disney Renaissance is almost entirely folk tales and classic children tales being retold. So like public domain kinds of stories you would have read your kids anyways. And that is not necessarily a given for Disney movies. They had a long period. I mean, that's, you know, Oliver Twist, for example, being just Oliver and Company, is not in that same boat. And it's almost, it feels like it's obvious because you have Snow White in the 30s and you have Cinderella in the 50s. And then you have The Little Mermaid that, like, of course, that's the template of what a story is like a well-known children's tale told as a musical. But again, that has not been a given in Disney's history. And I think that's why you often see people like brainstorming like, oh, Disney should just do their telling of blank. But yeah, not there have been plenty of Disney movies that have not been that way. There have been originals or have been more modern tales or something like that, or spin-offs from IP characters, etc. But anyways, yes, so we're in the sea, Brian, and so that takes place at above water, and then we go underwater, and we see the sea life. We see just what it looks like under the water, and that to me is one of the main achievements of The Little Mermaid. It is so cool looking under the water. The way that they depict the light sort of hazily glowing, and when things swim, there's bubbles everywhere. So many bubbles. I love the bubbles. And then Ariel, who of course we'll eventually meet, her hair just floating in the water. It's so appealing. I love it so much. And
it's very cool. And I like... So her hair is tomato red. Just impossibly red. It's red Crayola crayon red. Nobody has hair this color. But it works because it matches the crab. It's like the presence of that red, it works because it's like a thematic color.
Okay. Yeah, great use of color in both of these movies. And honestly, pretty much all Disney Renaissance. In general, I feel like the Disney movies are well made and like have artistic vision behind them and things like that. You know, they spend a lot of time storyboarding and such, so that you usually have stuff like, hey, we're using colors to tell stories and set moods and etc. But I definitely think you're onto something with clever use of color in these films. This screenplay is just, at least the first half of it, but all of it really, is just incredibly good. It's tight, and every beat just leads immediately to the next beat. It resolves the last one and leads to the next one, and you're just zipping through the story.
It's a very lean film. We've talked before that Disney movies, animated movies, tend to be about 80 minutes, which is pretty short. But this is one that it doesn't bother me. Like, even watching it now, it doesn't feel too rushed. It's like, it's quick, but for the most part, it's efficient. It doesn't feel like calamitously rushed.
Every scene is doing like three things at once. It's like a little set piece, and it's also setting up future conflict, and it's also resolving. It's like the natural consequence of something that happened before it. And so just every beat, there's like a couple of, I want to talk about it in the second half in particular, that it slows down a little to worse effect. But in general, it's a marvelous achievement of storytelling, let alone all the animation and music, you know? Some of the other first scenes, we talked about the one above. Then we have like this concert where the Ariel and her sisters are going to be performing. By the way, Ariel's sisters are a complete afterthought in this.
They just don't matter.
It's almost like she's like an only child, the way the relationship she has with her dad.
Yeah, she's clearly the favorite. But I wonder, I mean, they say she's the youngest daughter, so that would mean she's not like the crown princess. Which, yeah, it makes sense that she would go off to some other kingdom and marry the prince over there. It's like she's not going to take the crown like, I believe now, if I paid attention to Ariel's beginning, Little Mermaid 3 in like 2007, I would know who the oldest one was, but it's like, okay, you've got Adela, Arista, Alana, Aquata, Adina. That I think is only 5. I'm missing one, but yeah, they are interchangeable.
So we have this concert where the sisters are performing, and it's like the dramatic entrance of Ariel, except of course when they open the seashell for her to sing her song, she's not there. She's off on her adventures because she's a rebellious teenager, and it does explicitly say she's 16. Brian, this came up. I don't know if it was on the air or off the air, but that she is indeed canonically 16 years old.
Yes. I'm not a child anymore. I'm 16.
That made me laugh. This movie, Ashman and Menken had so much irony in their Little Shop numbers. Like it just perfectly tread the line of being like ironic and mocking of its characters, but also just being wonderfully heartfelt too. And this one doesn't have quite as much biting irony in it. Like, you don't have Somewhere That's Green that's like at once the ultimate takedown of the American dream, but also like a tribute to the beauty of living a simple life, achieving your American Dream. It's A and B. This one is a little more direct in general, but that line did make me laugh because it's like very obviously like, okay, it's like Romeo and Juliet where they're like idiot teens and like that's part of the point. It's like, okay, you gotta get over yourself a little bit, Ariel, here. Because we are programmed to be on her side, but also like as a dad, I'm kind of with the dad on a lot of the things that he's saying that Ariel should not be doing here. But the thing about Ariel is that she is fascinated with the human world, the land above the water. And her main conduit to it is this, I guess he's a seagull. Is that what he is? What is he supposed to be?
Right. Yeah. So a seagull, basically a creature who lives above the water, has some interactions with humans, more than a mermaid does. And so he's passing her this incorrect information, spreading misinformation.
So his name is Scuttle. And this time watching was probably the most I've appreciated Scuttle. One thing that I really admired is that so many characters get so well introduced by like the 10-minute mark. You already know the entire cast just so well. And Scuttle is very funny. One of my favorite bits in the whole movie is at the end of the movie when he's trying to communicate that the new bride to the prince is in fact Ursula. And he flies and he's trying to tell us what's going on, but he's so scatterbrained he can barely get through it. But he's also being very dramatic and like grabbing the crab and like pulling him in, and it's very humorously animated, but just like so well written. And that character is just defined, and he's like the 9th most important character in the story or something like that. So I was appreciating that. We also get a really exciting, intense shark set piece that I had forgotten that this was here because it just kind of mixed up in my head with the Finding Nemo shark scene, which both of them are incredible and use incredible scope of making the shark just seem dauntingly huge and dangerous.
Yes. So what I want to say is this movie is like intense and scary and sometimes violent.
Yes, for sure.
And like it's deft in the way it works in a variety of different tones.
Yeah, I agree. So Ariel misses her concert because she's off exploring I guess a shipwreck when she gets chased by the shark. And she discovers a artifact there, a fork. And Scuttle explains it's a dingle hopper. It's a comb that you use in your hair. And this is just great that he has all these made up names for all these different things. And we see that she has this hidden trove of all these artifacts she's gathered from the human world that's like hidden behind the stone. It's like her place to escape. It's like if you imagine going to a teen girl's bedroom and they've got posters of all the boy bands they have crushes on, and I don't know, like Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany's, like not stuck in hometown in your head anymore. You're off to the bigger, wider world in your head and dreaming of boys and the exciting world out there. And I really love this setting with all these little things. And of course it leads to the song Part of Your World, which is one of the all-time I Want numbers. Alan Menken talked about in one interview I saw that he and Howard Ashman, when they were writing this song, they called it Somewhere That's Wet instead of Somewhere That's Green.
Right. And so that's what he says in the interview. I think he misspoke. I think they must have called it Somewhere That's Dry, because that's what she's dreaming of. She's already somewhere that's wet.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I've thought that ever since I saw the interview, but there's a lot in this, like, melodically borrowed from Somewhere That's Green. Because the end of it, Somewhere That's Green, it's far from Skid Row, someday we'll go somewhere that's green. That's not exactly, those aren't the notes, but that's the cadence. And then here it's out of the sea, wish I could be part of your world.
Right. Yeah. And terrific use of animation. I mean, for me, I just find this such an evocative and touching song about like wanting more. and it does have a little bit of the tint of irony, because we know that like all the things that she's talking about how great it is above the sea is just not true. But it's warmer because and her longing is so palpable, and just these beautiful turns of phrase. And this is the first time we get to hear Jodie Benson singing. And man, it's like a payoff on this buildup of like, oh, she's the best singer, this sister. And then she's got this just beautiful voice. Probably my second favorite Disney princess singing voice behind, what's her name? Jasmine in Mulan. Lea Salonga.
Yeah, she's great. My brother, Andrew, who works at Disney World, has actually encountered Jodie Benson at the park. And so he's got a picture with her.
And there is a clip of Howard Ashman coaching Jodie Benson as she sings. And it's a great one, as she's doing like the practice recording sessions of the song.
And there's also work tracks of Ashman singing the songs. And it's
Whoa,
like you can
really?
tell that he really feels the stuff. And so I think there's layers to this song, because yeah, what is so great about being a human? And I want to know a little bit more about like, how did she come? I guess this stuff falls down from above and she's intrigued by it. But it's like, Sebastian makes some good points when he says that it's better under the sea.
Oh, for sure.
By far, you've got more of the Earth's surface to explore if you're sea dwelling. You have a whole third dimension to work with. It's like the human world is very flat. So I don't know. I'm curious, but I think there's like a queer angle. It's like, if you move to the big city, you can have a more developed social life. If maybe you don't fit in your little town you happen to be from.
So I've thought that as well. I think you read that more often as a take on Beauty and the Beast, and how it's like, the traditional masculine hero isn't all that he's cut out to be. Like, heteronormativity has its problems, But I recently, the last couple times I've watched this, I've really felt that as well. I think you're spot on with that. And I think also it's just the call to explore the wider world is a universal thing. And it's
right.
And to idolize it, even maybe when you shouldn't idolize it, as we'll learn.
And she just expresses it so earnestly that you buy it.
Oh, completely. There's a moment when she is swimming up to the sunlight, because her cache is in a cave, and she's swimming up to the sunlight, and the shot shifts to her swimming up, and her red hair is like swirling all around, and as she's swimming up, the sunlight is hitting her face. And this is just as the song is cresting, up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, out of the sea, wish I could be part of that world, or whatever it is, something along those lines. And it's just, to me, an all-time evocative moment of animation, and just a perfect moment.
Yeah, it's really great. I've seen some behind-the-scenes footage of this where they had an actress that they were using for reference. So, like, actually in a physical space, recording an actress. And I think one of the things they did is they put her in, like, a swivel chair so that they could spin her around and, like, see her from different angles as she's doing the different gestures, swimming up through the cave. Cheaper than using a jib for this reference exercise to actually spin the camera around her. But since in the scene, the camera, the proverbial camera is spinning all around, it's like you need to be able to see her different ways.
Since you mentioned the animation, both Ariel and Tarzan had the character animator of Glenn Keane, and they're both just utter triumphs of character design and animation. Very fluid. I mean, Ariel's hair is just a masterpiece, but she has incredible expressive faces and just very, very dynamic to watch. It's always fun to watch her. She's got like the right blend of like classic beautiful princess, but also like spunky teenager in the way that she kind of moves and her facial expressions, and I think it's an outstanding piece of animation.
Yeah, big expressive eyes. And so Glenn Keane is interesting because the legacy comic strip, The Family Circus, is by Akeen, and, focuses on a family with several children, and it is autobiographical. So one of the children in The Family Circus is Glenn Keane, and one of the other children, I think PJ, grew up to take over the Family Circus strip from his father. So it's like they were plugged into the art industry.
The drawing.
Yeah. They were drawers.
Do you ever think about the fact that drawer is drawer? I guess it draws in and out. I don't know, man. Drawer.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. The one that confuses me is some people call underwear drawers.
Drawers. Yeah, wait, why are those drawers?
In that case, you draw them up and down, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Another thing I think that's interesting about Ariel is that basically, like, every Disney princess since Ariel has been Ariel with a different eye color and hair color. Even the 3D CGI ones. Like, as soon as they went with the new leadership in the 2010s, which we talked about, I guess it was the mid-2000s when they first took over. But the Pixar-Disney merger and Tangled happened, and Rapunzel was basically just Ariel. As was, like I said, every Disney princess up from Ariel onwards. Now then we've had Encanto, where Mirabelle has the same, it's like the big eyes, almost anime-ish big eyes, and like smile and like a round girlish face, and it kind of feels like it's all of the same lineage, some of these princesses.
Yeah. And I mean, it all boils down to, I'm here, but I want to be here. So, but it's like at that point, you like narratives that have characters.
Well, I'm talking about the design, like the look.
I see.
Like I think you're onto something too about the writing motivation, but I actually mean the look of the characters.
Gotcha.
Anna and Elsa are kind of both Ariel too. I meant visually, but I think you are right that there's a lot of them. the I want princess, Okay, so of course this is not going to last long. Triton is frustrated. I've gone up and down over time on Triton as a dad. He's flawed, but I think he redeems himself as a dad.
Yeah, I agree. He can be intense. The scene where he is really popping off is like pretty scary.
Although I really like that, and we're going to get to that in a sec, when he eventually destroys this cache. Right after he does it and Ariel's crying, he gets this look on his face, and you know that he's realized that he went a little too far. He did some damage he shouldn't have done. But Triton tasks the crab Sebastian, voiced by Samuel E. Wright, and to keep an eye on Ariel. And then we get Under the Sea, where he tries to convince Ariel to not want to go up to the land anymore, because she swims up there and she sees Prince Eric and immediately falls in love with him, of course, at some point.
And I want to express appreciation for the incidental music in this film. So not just the songs, but like the score as well, which Zev Burrows, when we spoke with him, I think he was talking about Aladdin, that he liked some of the instrumental bits in Aladdin. But here in Little Mermaid, there's just a lot of great tunes, even when there aren't words. So, for instance, when she's going up to the ship, it plays this music because they're having like a birthday party for Prince Eric on the ship, and they're shooting off fireworks, and it plays this music that goes bom 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 bom, and then it dissolves from the like more epic fireworks music to a tune called Jig. It's on like an accordion. And so I was just at Disney, And right before the fireworks, we were at the Polynesian Resort, which is like the Tiki Hotel, sitting on the beach, looking out over the water. Like across the water is Magic Kingdom. So they were doing the fireworks over Magic Kingdom. But right before the show started, they did like a show where they had boats in the little lagoon adjacent to Polynesian Resort, and they lit up with like little animated characters made of Christmas light type lights. And each boat that lit up played a little instrumental tune, and a lot of them were from Little Mermaid. So there was like a King Triton float that lit up, and it played like the little fanfare that plays when his chariot comes out at the start of the movie. And then there was an Ursula float, and it played a little instrumental version of Souls. What is the word before Souls?
Poor Unfortunate?
Poor Unfortunate Souls, yes. It played a little version of Poor Unfortunate Souls. And then, like, all the boats switched off right before the fireworks were going to start, and it started going, ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba, and it did the little jig before the fireworks started. It's like, yes! We were on the same wavelength.
Alan Menken, a treasure. At one point, a couple of years ago, I was wondering, like, who contributed more to my vision of what movie music is, Alan Menken or John Williams? And then I was like, okay, it's got to be John Williams. But the fact that there was even, like, you could raise that. I mean, he did many, many of the Disney movies, and some even outside of the canonical animated films, and just wrote this brilliant number after brilliant number. There's a bunch of clips online of him doing medleys of the songs he's written, and hearing them like sequence one after another. It's like, this dude just wrote bangers for days, for years, bangers for years. And yeah, and he could write these great scores, the orchestral instrumental scores too. Eventually Triton does discover that, and as we talked about, destroys it. And that's a really gut punch scene, Brian. I was thinking of what's it called? The Elephant Man, when they destroy his artistic creation. It's not exactly the same thing because she didn't make it, but she sort of did. Like, she artistically arranged it, and it's like a reflection of what she wants, of her agency to explore the wider world and to grow up, you know? And he comes in and destroys it.
Yeah, we know it's important to her, and it's this scarce thing.
And he just comes in, and he's shot, first of all, so imposingly when he comes in, like frighteningly, and then he uses his zap magic to destroy everything in there, and it's like, oh.
I have a question about this scene.
Okay.
So, okay. There's the scene, Part of Your World, where we're introduced to Ariel has this trove, this cave that's kind of cone-shaped, and it's like narrow at the top, so that she can swim up there and look out through the little hole in that dramatic shot. Then we go back up to the ship where Prince Eric has his birthday party, and she sees him and falls in love, and then there's like a storm that wrecks the ship.
And that's a key one, yeah, because that's where she rescues him, and he gets a glimpse of her singing, and it's like imprints on his brain to the point that like, but then she goes away real quick, and so now like he's longing for her, but just imagining.
Yeah, so it's like the glass slipper in Cinderella, but it's the voice, which is primarily what he remembers. It's like, yeah, gotta fit the shoe, gotta have the voice, nothing else matters. It's not enough that she's a beautiful, eligible princess.
But no, good point. Go on.
But no, what stuck out to me is Grimsby, the manservant, unveils to Eric the birthday present, which is this big statue in his likeness. And it's like, for one, it must have been a lot of work to put that on the ship when it's just going to go back to land. So it's like, why not unveil it in the town square or something? But then the ship gets wrecked, and the statue falls down to the bottom of the sea. Then the next time we see it is Flounder says, "Hey, Ariel, come see." And the way that he says it, and Flounder is her fish friend, the way that he says this is like Flounder is somehow responsible for placing the statue where it is, which is inside her little cave. And it's like, how did Flounder do this? Flounder has no hands, Dan.
Is Flounder a god?
Flounder is a little fish with fins, and he somehow moved this, 1,000-pound statue.
He's also kind of the worst. I think Flounder's really annoying throughout this. I was like, he doesn't contribute anything. In fact, he makes things worse multiple times.
Okay, here is another thing about princess films. And this is one of the main offenders, along with the Swan Princess, the one that's based on Swan Lake that wasn't Disney. But often you've got a young woman who has no female friends. It's just entirely men influencing her. So ones that are different from that. So Pocahontas has a girlfriend, and that's Tiana. It's like you got to jump forward in time to find another one who has a female friend.
Well, there's one or two throwaways with the sisters here, but she doesn't really have any friends except Flounder. So I think you're right, but it's not like. I guess you're right. All the supporting characters. So you have the crab, the seagull, and the fish are all male. Yeah, you're probably right there. The sisters are the reason that doesn't really bother me too much. It's like she just wants to be off on her own, and these people just happen to be around or something. I don't know. But yeah, no explanation. It's just a story contrivance for the Prince Eric to appear. But after Triton destroys all of this stuff, Ariel goes swimming off to the sea witch, Ursula. And Ursula is a great villain, Brian, but she's also just fascinating. It's like, I want to know what's the Ursula story. I feel like, wasn't it introduced in a later one that she's the sister of Triton or something like that?
Right. And I think, as far as I know, this was in an early draft of the script, and then they thought maybe that's too messy, and so they took it out. And then, yeah, in the sequels it talks about it, or maybe it's in the Broadway musical. It's something they came back to later on as the franchise had tendrils. Because in the movie, she says, well, I remember when I lived in the palace. It's like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That's the only line we get. I love the way that she moves. So she has octopus tentacles, and it's just every frame is so interestingly rendered. It's it looks really complex, which there's a spectrum of complexity in the sea creatures in this movie. Some are very simplified and cartoony, and then some are more advanced.
Right. And I completely agree. They make great use of the tentacles. There's a lot of expressive things they do with it throughout the film. She kind of dances a little bit with them, and then sometimes they're cracking legs, and it's really cool.
And she's voiced by Pat Carroll, which I just learned this week. So there was a string of Garfield TV specials in the 80s, and Pat Carroll also voices the grandma in the Garfield show.
Oh, man.
Which is a very different performance. She's sweet. Still, she can get vivacious. She plays loud piano and stuff, but not villainous.
Okay.
But she's excellent as Ursula.
Oh, yeah. Up there for best vocal performances, at least for a villain of the Disney Renaissance era. Ursula has a grudge against Triton. It's a combination of a grudge and she wants the power herself. And she sees with Ariel's desperation and her alienation from her dad an opportunity to exploit her. And essentially tricks her into agreeing to this contract. And the way that she introduces herself is again, one of the great villain numbers. It's Poor Unfortunate Souls, the one you mentioned. And just so many little gross things in this, the lipstick she uses is gross slug guts and just a million different little things. And basically the agreement that's reached is that Ariel can go to the land, but what she has to pay is her voice. And of course you need a plot mechanism to move this forward. And that is, the contract is she needs to get a kiss from Eric, a true love kiss from Eric, before 3 days are done, or she loses her voice forever. And of course, we know that Eric is locked in on the voice. So Ariel has inadvertently set herself up for failure, which is, again, a great little bit of writing in the tension here.
Yeah. So, okay, Dan, here's another question. Is Ariel signs the contract.
Uh-huh.
She takes a pen, she writes her name. So she's capable of writing. So why can she not write out to Eric what's going on?
Yeah. No, it's dumb. Like, there has to be some way she can communicate this.
I mean, I would be ready to accept that mermaids just don't have writing. It's like you can't make a pen work underwater. That's enough for me. It's like they can speak, they can't write. But we see she writes.
Well, hold on. If I recall, so I think you're right. But if I'm not mistaken, when the way that the signing of the contract is animated, she like holds up the pen and like lightning comes out of it. So like, or is she actually stroking it, or is it like magic that is not necessarily her really writing? You know?
I believe she does write with the pen. I paid extra attention this time.
Okay.
Later on, when Triton signs the contract, he does it with his laser beam.
Okay, so maybe that's just what I'm thinking of. And then we get this just another transcendent piece of animation when Ursula casts the spell, and meanwhile Ariel starts to transform, and the voice comes out of her like glowing into the Ursula's seashell, and we see the fins transform into legs, and she has to swim all the way up to the top of the ocean. And I've seen this like described as sensual animation, maybe like replicating a sexual awakening of sorts, like when she kind of explodes out of the sea, which I find convincing and evocative, even though it doesn't end up really making sense for the rest of the story, because she kind of becomes less like teen horny after she comes out onto the land. It's like she regresses as a person. She becomes a toddler, basically.
Yeah, well, she can't talk, so it makes things complicated.
Uh-huh.
There is a lot of like detail in the legs, though, for sure.
Right. Yeah. I personally find the second half of the film to be worse than the first half. It comes right about at the halfway point when this contract signing occurs and this transformation. It's a little past the halfway point, but like everything leading up to that is just so tightly plotted and breathless. It just moves in terrific fashion. And then I feel like it slows down a little bit when we get out of the sea, because basically we're like counting down the 3 days, like little bits of can he convince her? And then meanwhile, now Triton is trying to figure out where Ariel went. And so it turns a little more episodic and slow for the second half. But of course, Eric finds her, and because she can't sing, he's like, oh, you're not the one who I thought, even though she looks identical and she's a mysterious person who arrived at the exact place where Eric had been saved earlier. Why couldn't it just be like, I got laryngitis right now, you know, or something like that?
Yeah, I think there's some easy ways out of this problem, but I like the scenes. I like the whole movie. Spoilers.
Oh yeah, so do I.
Even, you know, he's showing her around the kingdom, and you're seeing more of the human characters, but meanwhile they're being like monitored by Sebastian and Flounder, who know that there's this clock on her getting the kiss.
And what's incredible is Ariel is basically enjoying herself as much as she imagined. She's doing all these wonderful things, going on horse and carriage rides. And of course, the memorable one is she and Eric are drawing closer and closer together, and they go on this romantic boat ride. And we get Kiss the Girl, just this beautiful, almost doo-wop, like old school R&B type romantic ballad with a lot of vocal harmonies in it. And we said, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Brian, I suggested that Mary Poppins has a strong case as the best collection of songs written for a movie musical. I would say The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, the two Ashman Menken Disney films, are right up there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite human incidences is the scene when the chef is preparing the dinner, which is a scene that, like, it doesn't exactly advance the story, except that, you know, like you said, okay, Ariel's here in the human world and she's living and she's getting the positive experience that she dreamed of. But the warning from Sebastian and Triton was, you can't trust humans because humans eat fish. And then we see, you know, after having been taught the whole first 2/3 of the movie to, like, see the humanity of fish, now they're getting chopped apart. They're getting literally on camera, they're getting stabbed through and ripped apart in this silly song.
I want to love anything as much as this guy loves killing fish. Just like the glee of ripping bones. It's really gross and violent. It's like leading into it. Like, Disney would not do this nowadays. It is.
Exactly.
It's so
like,
fun.
This is bold and it's really funny.
Yeah.
Because he relishes it so much. And then it has he's also just saying a lot of stereotypically French dialogue. Like, literally the first line of the song is he goes, cuisine, Champs-Élysées, Maurice Chevalier. So he's just saying French things.
Yeah, almost like French gibberish.
Yeah.
This is, to me, is emblematic of the second half of the movie in that it's like inessential to the plot, but it is delightful. It's like there's no part of this that I don't like, you know?
And it has the lyric, les poissons, hee hee hee, ha ha ha, which is masterful.
I guess.
It's up there with anything in Gaston as something, just a master stroke by Ashman.
Rhyming poisson with ha 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 is up there for you? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, the only time it's been equaled as a rhyme was when the successor, once Ashman died and Steven Schwartz teamed up with Alan Menken, and they did Hunchback. And in that one it says, we all have gaped at some Adonis, but since you're shaped like a croissantis.
Like a croissant is?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
And because he's a hunchback, he's got that, the prominent bend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not an Adonis. He's like a croissant is.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. And just as it seems that Ariel is about to get that true love kiss, who should appear but Ursula, transformed into a beautiful woman. And of course, she has Ariel's voice. Now, one thing that's bugged me the last couple times I've watched is that, okay, we already have the narrative device of the voice, but she also immediately casts a magic thrall on Eric. It's like, why do we need the extra layer of casting the magic hypnosis spell on Eric? Shouldn't it just be enough that she has the voice? I kind of wish it had been a little bit more about, like, well, you don't seem quite right. You seem a little off, but you have the voice. And, like, having a little doubt there. But no, he's just like a thrall who dives into getting married the next day. I guess that's why you have to do it. It's like, why else would he get married the next day?
Everything has to move so fast. And also, like, we want to still like Eric. And so it's like, oh, he's not responsible because he was brainwashed.
Okay, yeah, I buy that. And so they plan to get married on a boat. And just as the wedding is happening, Scuttle pieces it together with this awesome shot of where Ursula appears in the mirror. So I'm wondering, like, would anyone else see this? Like, if Eric, you know, like they're doing their bedtime routine, brushing their teeth, and he looks in the mirror, would he see Ursula too? I don't know. That's something I was wondering.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I did like I almost wondered if it was improvised by Buddy Hackett as Scuttle, because he flies down to Ariel and he's like, the witch was watching. She was watching in the mirror, and it was the witch.
This is the bit I was talking about that was making me laugh really hard this time around, when he's trying to articulate it and stumbling through his words. It's very funny. Isn't it they break the shell? Is that how Ariel gets her voice back?
Yeah, so Scuttle recruits a bunch of the animals, and she's like getting slapped around by sea lions. And it's like not directly Ariel doing it. It's the animal friends smash the shell. And then she's got the voice back.
Right. And so Eric realizes what happens, the thrall breaks, and then they go to kiss just as the sun sets, but like literally 1 second too late. Like if it had been a second and a half earlier, they would have kissed in time. And so it's not just that she loses her voice forever. Doesn't she? She's going to be like a full-time prisoner.
Yeah. So what Ursula says is that if the kiss doesn't happen in the 3 days, you turn back into a mermaid and you belong to me. So like, she may even get her voice back. I don't know, but it's like you got to be Ursula's property, and you're not a human anymore.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand the exact mechanics of this, but basically Triton sees what's happened and says, all right, take me instead of Ariel, which is a great redemptive moment for him. Also stupid. Like, what are you doing, dude? You're the king. You have responsibility to the whole kingdom.
Right, and the power to control the ocean. So this is what Ursula really wants.
Right, exactly. It's exemplified by his
Trident.
Triton's trident. Okay, so now Ursula rules the sea, and she has the magic. And Eric comes back. He's like, give me my girl back.
It's a good fight because both Ariel and Eric get moments of doing something.
Right. Yeah, I liked it a lot, too. I thought it was pretty good. And she grows giant like a sea monster. And like a giant squid or like, again, I said kraken, like that. And I love the way that Eric ultimately kills her is like crashing the jagged ship mast, like the front of the ship. What do you call the nose of the ship?
The bow.
Yeah, into her. And you can just like, it's like so sharp looking.
Yeah, it's like you even see it like go all the way through her. Earlier in the fight when Ariel's fighting with her, Ursula fires off a laser beam and it kills her pet eels, who are like bad eels, but they get blasted into visible shreds. It's like,
Yeah, brutal. And I loved when she calls them my poopsies. That always, like, for as long as I can remember, that's made me laugh. And then order is restored, but Ariel is still a mermaid and is sitting out on a rock, longingly look at Eric as he wakes up. And Triton agrees to let her become human, live with Eric, let her, and this is very symbolic. The dad needs to let the daughter go out into the world and live her own life. I think Howard Ashman had a complicated relationship with his dad, like a lot of feelings about his dad, because I think he was going to make like Aladdin before he died, all about Aladdin's relationship with his dad. And here, this is obviously like all about the relationship with the dad. And the movie goes out with Sebastian and the chef, and Sebastian gets his final revenge. A mask comes down and smacks the teeth out of the chef guy. Comeuppance. But heart-swelling ending. Last shot is a kiss. That's Little Mermaid, Brian.
I dig it.
So, Little Mermaid was a massive success on pretty much every metric. Got great reviews, made a lot of money, and immediately ushered in a new age that would be just hit after hit. The one that came after it, The Rescuers Down Under, I would say is probably the least representative Disney Renaissance movie, but it's where they kicked off Caps. It was the first sequel or one of the first sequels, if not the first sequel that Disney did. I think I saw that it's like the first proper narrative sequel that Walt Disney Animation Studio ever did.
Yeah, it's definitely the first one that's like officially part of the canon.
And then we get to 1991 and we just have incredible, and then we just have an incredible string in the early 90s. So we have Beauty and the Beast in 1991, which I believe is the only animated film to be nominated for Best Picture in the 5-picture era. There have been a few animated nominees in the 10-picture Best Picture era, which you and I both picked as our number one favorite Walt Disney Animation Studio movie when we did a ranking with Hunter Allen a couple years ago, Brian. And then Aladdin in 1992, Lion King in 1994, Pocahontas in 95, Hunchback of Notre Dame in 96, Hercules in 97, Mulan in 98, and then Tarzan in 99. So again, a year after year, just, I mean, not every one of those is a tour de good masterpiece, but just banger after banger, you know, hit after hit. And coming in and year out, it's pretty impressive.
Right. It had me thinking of, there's a great documentary that I've mentioned on the podcast before about Tony Hawk. And he mentions that at some point, like probably around about 2000 or, early 2000s, that he started feeling burned out because the expectation is, oh, you're just going to keep winning and winning. It's like you go to these things, and if you win, nobody is surprised. And if you don't win, people are disappointed. It's like people expect it's just going to be hit after hit after hit. And I had Tony Hawk on the brain watching this because this is the Pro Skater X Games era of extremely goofy movie.
Yes. And this is definitely deliberate. Some of Tarzan's vine and branch and tree manipulation like resembles a skateboarder grinding on a rail, It's like definitely influenced by extreme sports, the X Games.
Yeah, he's doing half-pipe stuff.
So Tarzan, directed by Kevin Lima and Chris Buck. So Kevin Lima has made a Goofy movie and Enchanted. So definitely someone close to my own heart. And then Chris Buck was involved with Frozen 2, and Wish. You can't just have hits. But so not quite the same powerhouse duo of Clements and Musker, but Kevin Lima in particular is important to me. Brian, did you end up seeing the Not Just a Goof documentary about a Goofy movie?
Yeah, I watched it the day it came out.
It's pretty great. And I liked the way that they talked about Kevin Lima in there. And it just made me like him more. Tarzan used the deep canvas system, and at this point, the use of computers in the animation was just getting better and better from picture to picture. And Tarzan is kind of like the culmination of that. So I don't think it necessarily has like the most memorable characters or even like the most interesting visual design overall, but just in terms of like using technology in a way that like enriches the story and just really paying off on all of the process and technology advance, just a masterstroke and really the ultimate achievement by Disney in its renaissance, like the kind of the payoff on all of it, because things are happening so fast, like it's almost mind-boggling. Like there's this chase with these baboons about a half hour into the movie, and the sheer amount of invention and things happening in this it's just mind-blowing, Brian. Like that they were able to achieve all of this. I don't know. I think it's not a perfect movie, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about it, but the more I watch this one, the more I'm just kind of blown away by everything that they pulled together and the way that this is kind of, in some ways, the culmination of the advances that Disney made during the Renaissance.
Yeah. It's extremely kinetic, and it has this depth. So it's in kind of the same way that Ariel can, explore left, right, forward, back, up, down. Tarzan can do the same thing because he's got the trees and the vines.
Right. So he's got the 3 dimensions too, but they're able to do stuff here that you just couldn't dream of in the Little Mermaid days. I mean, this is 4 years after Toy Story. This is also, all of the Disney Renaissance movies have prominent romantic stories to them, but this one, along with Pocahontas, feels a little bit more like a grown-up love story, like not just teens. And so it's got a little bit more, I don't know if maturity is the right word, but maybe it is. Like it feels a little bit more grown-up and dark. And I don't know, there's like a lot of examination of physical intimacy in this in a way that you don't really have in certainly recent Disney movies, but I would say to some extent, even some of the ones that preceded it too.
Yeah. I mean, the intimacy is a great point. Also, though, this also has the darkness and the violence. I mean, it starts with, you see a gorilla baby get eaten. I mean, it's a quick cut, but it's like, that's what's happening. And then you see Tarzan's dead parents. Like, lots of Disney characters with dead parents, but you see the bodies here.
That is definitely different. So the way that this movie opens is, again, it's going to take place, like Brian said, we see these deaths and they kind of mirror each other. So a pair of gorillas lose their baby gorilla, and around that same time, Tarzan and his parents, who have moved into the jungle, do we officially know what they're doing? Are they like explorers or something like that?
So, yeah, it's a good question. The first time we see them is they get swept off a wrecked ship. So it's very similar to what happened to Eric, but yeah, we don't know why they're on the ship in the first place. We don't really know anything about them because they never talk. They solely exist in montage.
And they set up this like home, this treehouse, and it's like a built treehouse, which is why it doesn't feel like they're just marooned, you know? And there's like furniture and stuff inside it.
Yeah, basically they're the Swiss Family Robinson. Also, there's people online who think Tarzan's dad is really hot. I mean, there's probably people who think that about Triton, but I've specifically seen that stuff about Tarzan Sr.
I've specifically seen that stuff, yeah. Okay. We don't get his name, do we?
I don't think so. He's Tarzan with mutton chops. He looks exactly like Tarzan, but he has like funky old-timey facial hair.
Okay. Every bit of this is just really incredible. Like when the ship wrecks, you have this fire that's just so vibrant and scary. And the jaguar who kills Tarzan's parents is very frightening and violent. Like it harkens back even more intimidating than the Jungle Book threats. But I was thinking of the Jungle Book a little bit. But it's like a level above that, because we see, as you said, the body count from this jaguar. Although I think they know it. They like give it a name at one point. But I don't know. How many times had you seen this one leading up to this week, Brian?
Great question. So, not a whole lot. I remember going to see this one in theaters, which it feels like a bookend to me, not just as the end of the Disney Renaissance, but like this was the last one I saw in theaters for a while. Because, after this, it was like, I'm 10. I don't go see Disney movies in the theater. And what it lined up with was when Bolt came out, which is like 2008. That was when people started saying, Disney's getting their juju back. And so then from that point, it's like, okay, well, I'm 18 now. I'm a confident adult. I can go and I can watch a Disney movie in the theater again.
Confident in your Disney fandom.
And so Tarzan, I never had it on videotape. I never had it on DVD. It's like I saw it in theaters. I saw it, maybe once or twice when somebody else had it on home video. But then, yeah, not nearly as familiar with it as with Little Mermaid.
I saw it in theaters as well, and we did have a VHS of it at one point. So I've seen it many times. I've also watched it a couple times in the past few years. It's one that's grown gradually in my esteem as time has passed. And I think this most recent time might be the most that I've actually liked it. But it's actually got a lot in common with The Little Mermaid, because you have a grumpy dad. In this case, it's Kerchak the gorilla. And you have this person who feels like they don't quite belong in their world. In this case, it's a little more justified. A mermaid who wants to go meet a hot prince who's a human, But in this case, the person who is interested in the other world is actually a human. And I don't know, I was actually seeing a lot of synergy, but maybe that goes back to the point of what you were saying about how a lot of these movies, these coming of age movies that are musical animated adventures, like you are going to find overlap if you follow that format, you know. Tarzan grows up with the gorillas, but also like he's friends with the elephants, and he's got like two friendly sidekicks. One is a gorilla voiced by, it's Rosie O'Donnell, right?
Yeah. So this movie definitely feels more rooted in 1999 than Little Mermaid does in 1989. It's like you got all the pro skater stuff and you got Rosie O'Donnell front and center.
Right. And you have NSYNC on the soundtrack.
Is there NSYNC? Is that in the credits?
So it's definitely on the CD soundtrack.
Okay.
It might be like the second credits song or something like that.
Okay. Because the main musical voice is Phil Collins.
So let's talk about that now. So there was basically two modes that Disney did. One was get like a major pop star to write everything, and that was Tarzan and The Lion King. So Tarzan had Phil Collins, who wrote all of the musical numbers, and The Lion King had Elton John. And then the other one was to have Alan Menken writing your music. And that was most of the other ones we talked about.
Right. To me, the bigger stylistic difference is in Little Mermaid, in Beauty and the Beast, you've got characters singing the songs. Like, on screen, they're singing the songs. Whereas in Tarzan, most of the time, you're hearing Phil Collins sing, but it's over some kind of time is passing montage.
Right. So there's a lot of those, because this spans a long time. But Hunter Allen, in his review on Kinemalog, which I'll link to on the Goods Discord at thegoodsfilmpodcast.com, did a great job talking about this. He's essentially summarizing what's happening and doing it kind of vague enough that it could be like literally describing actions, or it could be describing character growth, or it could just be a generic pop song. And it kind of fits that pretty well, like each of those roles. But yes, it's in the background. So it's not the characters singing. It's like a something you are hearing, but the characters are not hearing.
Yeah. And it's like, he went from a baby to a kid. He went from a kid to an adult.
He discovered humans and is learning what human life is. Yeah. That said, Phil Collins wrote some really good songs, like just very catchy and rousing and spirited. Now, some of his lyrics are super dopey. With the power to be strong and the wisdom to be wise. Well, what does that mean? The wisdom to be wise? What are you talking about, Phil Collins? He's got the power to be strong and the wisdom to be wise.
All these things will come to you in time, Dan.
In learning, you will teach, and in teaching, you will learn. Okay. It's like in Community when Jeff Winger says they like it when you switch the words around.
Yeah, I think that's called, what, a chiasma or something? It's one of those literary devices. There's a character in Mystery Men who does that, and it's like, somebody calls him out, it's like, that it's not wise just because you switch it around.
But You'll Be in My Heart, and then I think it's called Two Hearts, and
Two Worlds, One
Two
Family.
Worlds, that's right, it is. And Two Worlds, and there's just, hold on, I'm going to pull up a list of the songs here, because pretty much every one of them is great. Yes, Two Worlds is the opener, You'll Be in My Heart. Now this one's interesting because it actually starts with Tarzan's mom, Ape. I forget what her name is.
Kala, the gorilla.
And I think she's voiced by Glenn Close, if I'm not mistaken. And she's singing this as a lullaby, and then it transitions into Phil Collins. But for like a minute, we have it as her singing the song. Not even a minute, probably like 30 seconds.
But by the way, speaking of relative runtimes, when you were talking Jellicle Cats, you said it's probably only 30 seconds, but it felt like 7 minutes. Well, actually, Jellicle Cats is 7 minutes long.
Oh man!
I went to you timed it well.
And then we have Strangers Like Me, which is another straight bop. lot of good songs here. This soundtrack is one that's fun to just put on.
Yes, and this was the one that I actually owned on a CD. We had the Tarzan soundtrack.
So Tarzan is growing up. Oh yeah, and then he's also got an elephant friend, and the elephant friend is, I believe it's Wayne Knight, isn't it?
Yeah, Newman, when they're adults. Which means that he did Toy Story 2 and Tarzan the same year.
Name me a better year for an actor.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I mean, you got Yul Brynner when he was The King and I and Ramses in 10 Commandments. But
there you go.
It's pretty close to that.
And so the big thing is Tarzan doesn't have a family. He doesn't remember his parents at all. So he just grows up, but he doesn't quite get why he's different. Because, of course, a man is a primate, but isn't covered in hair and thinks differently. I like the montage when he's like solving problems by doing things that like humans would do, like building tools as he's growing up.
Yeah, I love that. There is a scene when he covers his face with mud to better resemble the gorillas. It's like, no, Tarzan, you can't do that.
Or you mean like blackface? You think he was blackfacing himself?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Tarzan,
maybe.
stop.
We see him grow up, kind of like in The Lion King, Hakuna Matata when he grows up. And then he's constantly avoiding danger, and he's just very comfortable in the jungle. And as he gets older, he gets more and more comfortable, like with his tricks. And meanwhile, Kerchak is his adoptive father, but refuses to call him son. And so he's a very stern, but kind of like with Triton, it's like he's responsible for taking care of the tribe. So he needs to be tough for that purpose, you know? So it's kind of rooted in the character too.
Also, it doesn't go into it too much, but it's a similar social structure to Lion King, where in a gorilla troop, you've got one dominant male and many females. So it's like any young gorillas are presumably his sons.
Interesting point.
It's like, Mufasa is fathering all the lion cubs. I mean, if we were a biologist, it's like there are questions of how closely related are Simba and Nala.
Thinking face emoji right now. Of course, before long, after he's a grown-up, he defeats the jaguar without realizing it's the one that killed his parents. And he gets he raises the corpse of the jaguar and does his Tarzan call. I was like, this is pretty dang brutal here.
Yeah. I was wondering, Dan, can you do the Tarzan yell?
Oh, man. I haven't tried in a long time. Can you, Brian?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. I could probably project a little bit more. Think a little bit more about it. I could practice it, Brian.
Yeah, we could both stand to practice.
Workshop it.
But I think that was not shameful. That was acceptable.
What if it had been shameful? Horrible.
We could cut it out. It doesn't need to make it to the audience.
Anyways, when he's a grown-up, other humans come in as explorers into the jungle. And Tarzan has never seen other humans in his memory, so this is very novel to him. And the three people that he meets are Clayton, who is like the guide, but very clearly a hunter. It's like, it made me think of The Simpsons when Bart gets an elephant and an ivory salesman wants to buy the elephant. And doesn't Homer say something like,
"Now, Bart, your elephant is in less danger from this man than someone whose ivory supplies are low."
And then we have the absent-minded professor, the scientist. I just know him as the professor. According to my notes, his name is Professor Archimedes Porter, which is a great name, Archimedes Porter. And then, of course, you have Jane. And Jane is voiced by Minnie Driver. And she has the Disney princess face of the big expressive eyes, the Ariel face. A little different. It's not exactly the same. And now Minnie Driver, we've talked about a couple times, Brian.
Right, because we just saw her in the Phantom movie, right?
Exactly, yeah. And she was in Good Will Hunting. So maybe this is secretly Minnie Driver month because she was also in the Phantom movie. And Tarzan is very fascinated by her. And of course, he has no social norms. So he's like getting right up in her face and like touching her, grabbing her nose and like, you look like me. And it's very funny and a good dynamic. And in many ways, the arc, in some ways, it's like both Tarzan and Jane get major arcs in this movie. And in some ways, because Jane is kind of more in the know about what's going on, I feel like she has to change more spiritually as the movie goes. She has to accept that she's okay being a jungle woman, you know?
Right. Yeah, I like this whole arc. My favorite scene in the whole movie is the Strangers Like Me song, which is, like many of the others, a montage. And it kind of accomplishes two things. I mean, arguably it's one thing because it's Tarzan learning that there are other people, other humans, and that he is himself a human. But then the extension of that is that he's interested in Jane. And so it kind of segues into this. Now it's a romance song. But my favorite part is the first part, when the professor is doing a magic lantern show for him. And he has this, like forerunner to a projector. It's this thing you put a candle in it and it can it's like a overhead projector, can shine an image on the wall when you put slides in it. And it's like all these like woodcut slides of human civilization. And you get the reaction shots of Tarzan seeing like buildings for the first time, castles and cities, and then the face that he makes when he sees outer space for the first time. It's like, that's incredible. I love this. It's like I almost want the love song to be a separate scene because I just want to see Tarzan reacting to space some more.
Yeah, no, this is a terrific scene. Great use of lighting too, like the way that the lantern glows on Tarzan's face. And it's really cool. I mean, the color design in this is just outstanding. You have like the glowing yellows when somebody's discovering something and like the safe greens of the woods. And then you have the danger coming in with the steely blues. It sounds like a music band or something like that.
The Steely Blues.
Yeah. Anyways, when Clayton and his industrial world comes into the jungle, but
also the magic lantern's like a little nod to the power of film. It's like a proto movie that they're watching.
Yes, that's good too. I mentioned synthesis earlier as like a theme for me this week, and in Little Mermaid, it's like synthesis of accepting that you're gonna be your roots, like you are a mermaid, but also that you can go out into the wide world, and like these two ideas need to find some balance to each other with each other. Here, the synthesis is much more like concrete and observable because you have the jungle man and you have the prim proper British woman, and they like kind of find a middle ground in it. Because that's like a third thing that's happening in Strangers Like Me is Jane is seeing what Tarzan's life is like, and that she could have a little more self-confidence and be a little bit more in touch with the nature and the world around her and things like that too. So a terrific sequence for sure. Now, Tarzan is trying to get up the nerve to ask Jane to like essentially be with him, stay with him. And meanwhile, they're getting ready to go back onto the boat, the explorers. In fact, it's almost like a surprise. They just show up. And so Jane and the professor and Clayton are getting ready to go back onto the boat. And all as this has been going on, the jungle inhabitants, the animals, and the humans have been kind of growing closer and closer, not just Tarzan and Jane, but like the animals have been going into the camp. And that's where we get the Trash in the Camp song, which has a lot of little good flourishes to it.
Yeah, I feel like this must have also been the moment that stomp was a thing.
Oh, interesting. And one bit I liked about it that I noticed this time is they have like a human skeleton as like a model for anatomy, and they like make it dance, but it really evokes the old Dancing Skeletons classic cartoon. Like the animals are resistant of the humans, but Tarzan eventually convinces them to let the humans come by. And there's a great shot of like when Jane first sees all of the apes, and it's just constantly making great use of this moving camera and this deep canvas technology. This movie's always a joy to look at. So, but we know that Clayton is up to no good, and he's like conspiring with the ship people to like abduct all the animals and hunt them and bring them onto the boat, and I guess also kidnap the professor and Jane. I don't quite know what their objective is there, just that I guess Professor and Jane would not be on board as naturalists with abducting these animals from their natural habitats.
Yeah, the timing of it has always felt weird to me because it seems like, okay, well, don't kidnap the humans until you're out to sea. Because it's like they do it all this heel turn while they're still on the beach. And it's like, just, if you want to get away with this, like, put out to sea first.
Yeah, the mechanics of it are a little confusing.
Like, don't even give them the ability to go and warn the animals or, like, go back into the jungle or any of that. It's just like, take them to sea, then kidnap them.
But this leads to a climax that also had me thinking of The Little Mermaid, because we have all of the animals of the jungle coming in to help the humans, because basically Tarzan has decided if Jane's going to leave, I'm going to go with Jane. And he gives a dramatic goodbye to his mom.
And he puts on a human suit.
Yes, and it looks very odd when he does. But now all the animals come and rescue the humans on the boat, at least the nice humans. And we have a big animal versus humans battle. And we get one of the classic Disney villain deaths when basically he gets hoisted by his own petard, pretty much literally. He hangs himself, and we get like a lightning flash, and you see his dangling body. I was like, this is dark again. It's like another bit of death that's practically on screen. The culmination of this comes when the boat is sailing away, and Tarzan has decided to stay as the new chief because during the battle, Kerchak died. And just as he died, he agreed, he acknowledged Tarzan as his son and his rightful heir. And so Tarzan needs to look after the tribe of gorillas. It's his duty now, so he cannot go away with Jane. He must sacrifice his love in order to look after them. But Jane is going to leave, but then the professor's like, you should stay with Tarzan. And so she stays with Tarzan, and then the dad's like, oh, well, I may as well stay too. And so they jump into the boat and are swimming back to land just as the boat is sailing away. So Tarzan, Jane, and the professor and all the gorillas live happily ever after here. Then the credits have the more famous version of You'll Be in My Heart, the one that you would hear on the radio, where it's just Phil Collins singing. But that is Tarzan, Brian. Any other like beats or moments you wanted to call out before we wrapped up here?
It's another one that is efficient. Like, this one, more than Little Mermaid, there are some moments that I felt a little rushed. Mainly that villain turn of the boat people. Of course, you knew that Clayton was going to be bad, so it's not too much of a surprise. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it's just a movie that keeps moving the whole time.
It's a few minutes longer than Little Mermaid. It's, including credits, it's an hour 31. But that's still quite short, and it definitely moves. But Brian, you watched the documentary. So why did the Disney Renaissance end after this? I mean, we've tossed out a couple of ideas as to why, but do you have any kind of clean summaries as to why the Disney Renaissance ended?
I think there's a couple forces. So one is you could point to Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was an executive specifically overseeing the animation in the late 80s, early 90s. And then Frank Wells, who I believe was the president of Disney, died. And Katzenberg's expectation was that Eisner would promote him to be the new president. And there was like rivalry between those two guys. And also Roy E. Disney, who is like Walt's nephew, was another power player. And there was kind of tension between the three of them. And Katzenberg thought he wasn't getting his due, and so he left and teamed up with Steven Spielberg, and they started DreamWorks. and then had their first movies in like 1997 with Ants and then Prince of Egypt, and then Shrek a couple years later.
Right, and I feel like Shrek was the big shakeup because Shrek was a huge smash. Meanwhile, the Pixar movies were getting more and more buzz too. So like the animated musical Broadway style was going out of favor for something a little bit more postmodern and in the sake and in the and for Shrek at least snarkier and like pop culture referencey. So it's just a shift in the tides. These things happen over time.
Right. So I'm glad you said that about Pixar. I think Pixar and DreamWorks both cropped up as these different models that were having economic success, and then to the point that CGI kind of supplanted the hand-drawn animation. The Disney main studio had some weak films with like Home on the Range, and what else was in that window? Meet the Robinsons, Chicken Little. It's like they kind of lost their identity a little bit, even though I would say that Lilo and Stitch, which was in the midst, is a very, very good movie.
I'm a little mixed on Lilo and Stitch, but I think the spirit is there for sure. You also had The Emperor's New Groove, which at this point is popular enough. I don't even know if you'd call it a cult hit, but it kind of felt like the cult Disney hit for a while. It's kind of more Looney Tunes in style, very less of a musical and more of like a zany slapstick shenanigans adventure.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do Emperor's New Groove someday, because there's a lot of interesting things about the making of that one.
For sure, yeah. But it really was this great era, and my current thinking on the Disney Renaissance, I've kind of wavered on this up and down, but I feel like it's now almost easy to underrate them than it is to overrate them. It's like they've just been such architecture in our cultural lives, and that can cut both ways. It could be like, well, I've always watched them, so I love them, of course, like uncritically.
I mean, we talked about that Lion King is like the most profitable entertainment product of all time.
Right. But I think the flip side of that is like, you almost take it for granted. If it's like something you've seen 150 times, it's like, oh man, you lose marvel at like the way the ship moves in the water, the way that Tarzan swings when the baboons are chasing him. It's like you've seen it before, so it doesn't feel as exciting. And you're just, the stories and the scripts and the jokes and the songs. So you're not like going out of your way to notice just how tightly written it is and how good the music is. Like to talk about, man, The Little Mermaid is one of my favorite movies. It's like almost trite, if you're a millennial, but it's like, it is that good. So I don't know. That's my current feeling, is that it's easier to underrate them than it is to overrate them these days. But I think this has been a good capper for Musical Month, Brian, because this is, at least for me, why the origin of why I love musicals are these movies, and the way that these songs make you feel and the way that they contribute to the story. I think you're right that in Tarzan, it's a little different. And I would say maybe not quite as effective because it's not so elegantly integrated into the story. But I still think it is very effective. And just in general, like Disney music, I mean, it's an institution. It's like, Disney has built this brand as like this way to make, we kind of talked about it with the Mary Poppins thing. It's like a way to engage with the magic of the world, even as you become a grown-up and face complicated life, and just to see a certain magic and romance in the world. And I think that is epitomized by the power of the music in particular. So for me, it's a proper capper to Musical Decades Month. But on that note, Brian, shall we rate, or is there anything else you want to say?
I'm ready. I just want to say, semi-interesting that when they made Tarzan, one of the complexities of copyright is that, other ones probably say, in Little Mermaid, there's probably something in the credits that say, based on the story by Hans Christian Andersen. But, like, the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate still had some part of the copyright of Tarzan. So, like, more than just based on the books, like, in the Kingdom Hearts games, in the title screen, it's like, copyright Disney and the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate and the St. Ormond Street Children's Hospital, because they still had, like, perpetual copyright of Peter Pan from J.M. Barrie.
That's funny.
So, it's kind of interesting.
I didn't know that, but it kind of makes sense. It's a slightly more modern story than some of the other fairy tales that Disney was adapting. But Is It Good is our signature section where we each give the movie a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating, toward a good, an 8 out of 8. So, Brian, is The Little Mermaid from 1989 good?
This is one that kind of gets better every time I watch it. Like I said, I watched it a lot as a little kid, and it was very much buried in my memory. But it's authentically really excellent, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 8. A tour de good. It's brisk without feeling slight. But I think everybody who worked on it was really firing on all cylinders. A lot of the animal animation is kind of quite cartoony, but that's really like the only mark that I can give against it. In other things that would follow it up, they'd put more effort into making the animals look like, they bring in lions and actually, learn about how do you draw lions or how do you draw gorillas. And here it's a little more simplistic. It's not Finding Nemo in terms of immersing you in, wow, we really are under the sea, but it's very remarkable how they make the hair float. And yeah, it's a deft script, introduces all the characters and what they're about, what they want. And the music soars, like not just the songs, although the songs are super memorable. Like you're not going to forget Under the Sea or Part of Your World. Even the smaller stuff though, Fathoms Below and Les Poissons. It's like this sticks with you and lives with you and changes the face of the animation industry. So yeah, 8 from me.
Toward a good masterpiece. Very cool. I'm excited to induct Little Mermaid into our rare 16 club because I'm going to give this a toward a good masterpiece rating as well. Maybe a little bit of surprise when I was saying that I found the second half worse. In the past, if you read what I've written, I've given it 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, and it probably even has a capsule on my website where I gave it an exceptionally good. But just when I watch it, it's just so good. And it's like, if not this, then what? What is a masterpiece of animation if not The Little Mermaid? Yeah, there are a couple parts where I'm like, well, go back underwater. I like that more. But the music, the characters, the animation, the sense of adventure, and I just think it's a rock solid story, like stakes and characters, and it kind of all makes sense in a way that, like, how people talk about, Beauty and the Beast is just Stockholm Syndrome, basically. I think that's an oversimplification. But I think there's something to the fact that this is just entirely built around its character arcs. And just such a clear story through line, such an elegant piece of writing, and transcendent animation, and just all the talent coming together. Clement and Muskers, Howard Ashman, Alan Menken. Absolutely love it. And it's funny, and it's exciting, and it holds up, and it will always hold up. And because it was the first, it has an element of like, we're just kind of throwing this together that some of the other ones don't have. Just like, it feels like they're just kind of making stuff up in a certain way. But it also, I don't know, it's almost elemental in the way that you like feel the danger of some of it too. And that harkens back to the old Disney stuff. It's just it's synthesis, Brian. It's everything coming together. So masterpiece rating for me. Welcome to the 16 Club, Little Mermaid. That brings us to Tarzan from 1999. So Brian, is Tarzan good?
I was also quite impressed with this one. Like more than I remembered. It is a good film. It's a very good film. I'm going to give it an exceptionally good 7 out of 8. It always keeps moving. And, like, the animation is awesome. Just how the characters are able to move through the space. And the story is quite good. Like, I felt for Kerchak, the gorilla chief. It's like, oh, he's surly, he's intimidating, but you understand why he is, because it's like, humans are not to be trusted. I mean, speaking as a human. And so, like, I like this space that they're in. It's just a jungle environment that is convincingly rendered. Although, I think maybe it should be said, you never see a black person in this story set in Africa.
Well,
so
yeah.
I mean, there are. You wonder. It's like, where are all the humans? Why have they never seen any humans? But it's this dense jungle that has been unexplored. So good music. I would even say great music. It feels maybe a little bit less of a piece when the characters aren't breaking into song. It feels a little bit less musically. But it still has this darkness. It still has this mix of tones that are well blended. It's like, you do have violence. You do have... It takes itself seriously. And it feels earned.
Yeah. Exceptionally good. I like to hear that, Brian. And I am actually with you again. Although I was watching, I was like, is this a masterpiece? Because it really is just so good. It's so well animated. Like, nonstop just... action, and it's also inventive and brilliant to watch, and it can bounce between tones so well. It can be dangerous, it can be funny, and like that scene with the baboons, it just hits every single tone, and it's funny, it's scary, it's romantic because he's like saving Jane. It's like all these things. I think it's an excellent film. I'm going to give it an exceptionally good. It's just not quite as iconic. Some of the lyrics are kind of dopey, but mainly I just need to be convinced that it's a masterpiece, and I'm not quite there. I don't even really have any too harsh complaints with it. Yeah, the lyrics are dumb, but like that doesn't bother me too much because the music's great. I love Phil Collins' work. It's a great soundtrack to just put on, but it's also so well used in the movie in these montages. So exceptionally good for me as well on this one, Brian. And honestly, you look at the Disney Renaissance, and the only ones that I would say are like pretty definitively not exceptionally good or higher are Pocahontas and The Rescuers Down Under. And I don't know, I kind of want to rewatch Pocahontas.
Yeah, I actually quite like Pocahontas. Maybe we get a Pocahontas someday. It's definitely the touchy one.
Yeah, because Hunter Allen wrote a review of Pocahontas that kind of opened my eyes on it. Like, maybe there's more to this than I was giving credit for, or maybe I was just coming in on the preconceived notion that it was the bad Disney Renaissance one. But this was truly a golden era, I think. They were always doing interesting and rich things with musical cinema. And that wraps our look at musical decades, Brian. We've talked about 100 years of musical cinema, 10 decades worth. And thank you for indulging me on this theme month. But now as we venture beyond our theme month, our musical decades, into something new in March, what will we be discussing, Brian?
Yes, we don't have the guidelines anymore, the walls to box us in and keep us on track. We're unmoored, and I was struggling for a moment to think, well, what do I want to watch next? I've been hearing buzz from Dan, among other people, about the director Yorgos Lanthimos. And I have never seen a Yorgos Lanthimos film to my knowledge. I want to watch The Lobster.
All right.
Dan.
I have not seen this one, Brian. I actually just watched my first Yorgos, Begonia, so we can talk about that one as well. Or at least I can give a high-level thoughts on that one. But yeah, this will be interesting. The Lobster by Yorgos. He has a Best Picture nominee this year, so it's timely because we're coming up on the Oscars.
That's right. So you can bring in that perspective, but we're both new to this one alike.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, listeners, for bearing with us on these long and detailed conversations about 2 movies a week. Back to 1 a week next week, although we'll see what we throw in the mix as time passes. But
yeah,
this has been a fun month for me, and I look forward to discussing The Lobster next week with you, Brian.
Well, me as well, Dan. Stay tuned.
Bye.